So the game is Boots and Saddles, but this is really an off-the-shelf video series for the Assault game system. So you're starting with the introductory scenarios, and you have found your force mixes for each side. These are your American tanks. These are your Soviet tanks. And one of the most obvious things that will jump out at you is we have units with white writing, we have units with black writing, and that's on both sides. Now, in this case, on both sides, the white units, the units with white unit values are also the headquarters, but back to our unit identification chart. Underneath the symbols that tell us, or the layouts that tell us what all the numbers and symbols mean on the counters themselves, go down unit IDs, symbols, and here's color codes. So the black on green, like that, black on green is a US 2-step unit. Black and white on green, that's black and white on green, is a US 1-step unit. And similarly for the Soviets. 1-step Soviet unit and a 2-step Soviet unit. Okay, so we have that. So as we move forward, we know we're dealing with 2-step units and 1-step units. And that's pretty much it. Well, we'll go over these things real quickly, but be even better in play to actually use these. But we'll do a quick overview. So this is an AFV unit, an armored fighting vehicle unit, and AFVs are the only types of units we're using in this introductory scenario. So we have the regular AFV units, platoons, and we have the headquarters unit. Okay, real quickly. So these are not, by the way, even though it looks like 3 numbers separated by dashes at the bottom, what this is definitely not is attack value, defense value, movement value. Well, there is a movement allowance, but okay, from left to right, the 15 in this case is the frontal armor, 9 is the flank armor, 3 is the movement allowance, and the T superscript is the mobility class. And then we obviously have a T-64, and then we have the unit ID again, 1st Platoon Alpha Company, 11th Battalion. On the back, by the way, we have a simple arrow, and that's true for all units. All right. The sequence of play. Really 2 things to say about the sequence of play. One, it's not very, I don't even think it's summarized even on any single play aid. But anyways, it is not complex. Well, I know what, it's on the back of the rules booklet. The sequence of play is not complicated at all, 1, and 2, the only thing unusual about it is that there are 2 movement phases for each side. So, for example, the Soviets always go first, and there's a artillery phase, then there's a first movement phase with U.S. opportunity fire, then there's a simultaneous fire phase, I guess you call it direct fire phase, and then there's a second Soviet movement phase with U.S. opportunity fire. And then the same thing is repeated for the Americans. So not really a big deal. So let's do some Soviet movement. I'm going to take the 1st Platoon here from Alpha Company, and I'm going to start them here, but we need to figure out how we actually orient the platoon on the ground. So a unit at all times is going to be in one of 2 formations if it's unbroken. So we're talking about good order units or unbroken units are always in one of 2 formations. So there's a march formation and a combat formation. which formation the unit is in is determined by what it's facing. If it's facing a hex side like that, it's in march formation. If it's facing a point, it's in combat formation. Hex side versus hex vertex, according to the rules. But so that platoon is in combat formation. This platoon is in march formation. It's facing a hex side. And by the way, the exact same thing is true if they're on the unspotted side. This is an unspotted Soviet unit in combat formation, and that's unspotted Soviet unit in march formation. Okay. So this first platoon, again, it has a movement allowance of 3, and it's a mobility class T for tracked. And again, 3 is the movement allowance that this unit can spend in each movement phase. So remember that there are 2 Soviet movement phases per turn. So we want to move this first platoon to the town of, well, this town here, Falkenberg, and then on across the stream here. So not complicated at all, and somewhat familiar for a GDW layout. So we have hexes and hex sides, march formation, combat formation, and mobility category. So obviously for our tank platoon, we're using the T mobility category, and it's in march formation. So as it moves along the primary road or secondary road, it's going to be expending 1/2 of a movement point, 2 for a town, 1 for clearing woods. Yep, and then that, well, I guess actually the road does pass the stream there. All right, here's our terrain key. Yeah, so it is a stream. So stream, red for primary road, black for secondary road. So I moved the tank platoon 1 hex like that, and obviously now we need to consider turning or rotating or changing facing. They are in march formation. Okay, so this is important because unit is always moving the way it's facing. So in march formation, the movement is starting here. Actually, let me start it facing this way. You can change, a unit may change facing without movement cost immediately before entering each hex of its move. So it can change facing for free before moving into this hex. So that's 1/2, still 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2. Okay, 2, and then a unit, it retains the facing of its last hex moved unless it expends an additional movement point to change facing. So it's 2, and then it's going to expend a 3rd movement point to change facing again. Oh, I guess as a matter of fact, it could even do that. In putting its frontal armor, even though it's a unit, even though it's a platoon, but putting its frontal armor this way in anticipation of enemy appearing somewhere here. So I'll do that. So that's 3 movement points. That's its full movement allowance for this movement phase. Okay, also under movement, I do want to talk about cover, and to do that, I'm going to take the 2nd platoon, and I'm going to put them up here, already in position. So they're in these woods here. They're facing a hex vertex or point, so they're in combat. That means that they're in combat formation. So they're already here at the start of this movement phase, the same movement phase that the 1st platoon moved up here in march formation. So any unit in combat formation may enter cover in any friendly movement phase if it does not move, dismount, or deploy in that phase. This does count as movement. So the 2nd platoon in the woods is going to go into cover, which means that I'm going to place a cover counter, and these are dual purpose for each side. That's Soviet cover, U.S. cover. But 2nd platoon is going to go into cover like that. You're going to face the point faces the 2 front hex sides of the unit. So I thought that there were 3 key things about cover, by the way. First of all, and this is interesting, so let's say the unit's out here, for example, in combat formation. Any unit which is fired upon during either fire phase and is in combat formation automatically enters cover at the end of the phase. So it automatically enters cover, and it is turned to face toward one of the vertices of one of the hex sides across which the fire came. So if the unit was here in combat formation and it took fire from this way, at the end of the phase it will be turned to face the fire and automatically go into cover. Second thing is, and I thought this was huge, maybe it's not, but I thought it was huge when I read this. So that unit's in combat formation, but only units that are in cover. Only units in cover may conduct opportunity fire. So really the marker is more than just cover per se. And third, you can change facing and change your cover in the process.